All right, welcome on in, guys, to the second ever episode of Hot Black Coffee. Now, for all of you who did tune in to the first ever episode, that was last week, I cannot thank you enough. The feedback I got was tremendous. You guys were DMing me. A few of my close friends were texting me saying the pod is awesome. They like the podcast, and that means the world to me. I'm all by my lonesome in this room. So when I hear feedback and I know people are actually listening to the show, it makes me feel like I'm not a crazy person talking to a computer. So again, thank you guys. Head on over to HBCpod on Instagram and hook me up with a follow. Like some of the shit, comment, DM me if you want. I'm interacting with everyone right now. We are a small little army of HBCers. I haven't named my fan base yet because I don't even think I have fans. I think I have fan. I think I have one fan. And it's my mother right now. So, Mom, thank you for supporting the show. But yeah, we have a little small army. It kind of reminds me of the movie 300. There's only a few of us, but when we're together and we are a cohesive unit, we are strong and we are powerful and we can overtake anybody we want to. We can overtake anybody we want to. So again, guys, I know I've thanked you a million times, but I'm new to this, and it's cool to know that people are listening. So thank you for tuning into the first ever episode last week. Now on to Epi 2. We are out of the gates murdering. I feel like I've been doing this for 8 months already. I've put out 2 episodes, so good on you, Scott. Pat on the back for that, for putting out 2 episodes. But what's in store for you? We got my longtime buddy, Connor Gallagher, is going to swing by the show. He is an oceanographer. He's going to fact check me on that. I'm not sure that's the right title because I don't really even know what the fuck an oceanographer does. But I do know that he is a videographer and he's had numerous experiences in the ocean interacting with a wide variety of marine animals, including my white buffalo, the great white shark. So we're going to talk about shark attacks. We're going to talk about the pollution of the ocean. We're going to talk about animals in captivity. A whole bunch of great stuff coming on later in the episode. But for now, let's roll into this music. Let's roll into episode 2. I'm excited, guys. Thank you for tuning in. Hot Black Coffee, episode 2. It begins right now. I love that music. We are off, and they're off for episode 2. I haven't talked to you guys in a week. There has been a lot going on. The NHL playoffs are off and rolling. The NBA playoffs have been nothing shy of fucking spectacular. Some really, really good games going on. We've had a lot of upsets out of the gates here. Portland won game 1. Orlando beat Milwaukee in game 1. So there's been a lot of good stuff going on in the sporting world. But I'm going to stay on the topic of sports, but I'm not talking about the games right now. I want to talk about Thom Brennaman. Now, who's Thom Brennaman? Thom Brennaman he was the play-by-play announcer for the Cincinnati Reds. And old Thommy boy had a slip of the tongue. I don't even know if it was a slip of the tongue. It was more so just a bonehead fucking move. Now, Thom, which before we go into this, Thom, dude, I hate when people spell their name all cutesy. Like, Thom, I'm sorry, Thom, it's not a name. Now, you can either be Thomas or you can be Tom. And if you're Tom, you spell it T-O-M. It's not T-H-O-M like you do it. It's just T-O-M. So first off, Thom, that you should probably change that first if you ever get back into broadcasting, because that annoys the fuck out of me. But anyways, Thom was broadcasting a game for the Reds, and I believe they were coming back from commercial break, and Thom said, "That is the fag capital of the world." Now, I'm in Walter Cronkite mode, so I can say fag right now. But usually I would not, but I'm just reporting. And I hate when people are like, he said F-A-G. Because if you spell it and you're over the age of 2, it's the same thing as just saying it. So just say it. Just say it. So Thom said this is the fag capital of the world, and he was broadcasting live on air. Now, is anything about that funny? Not at first glance. Like when he came back, I was like, that's funny, but also awkward and horrible of him to say. Now, he realized he said this, and instead of just removing himself from the situation, he decided he was going to do an apology in the middle of an inning. And that's where this gets funny. That's where this gets very funny. I'm going to play the clip right now.
I pride myself and think of myself as a man of faith. As there's a drive in a deep left field by Castellanos, it will be a home run. And so that'll make it a 4-0 ball game. I don't know if I'm going to be putting on this headset again. I don't know if it's going to be for the...
That is the most unintentionally funny thing I've seen in so goddamn long. I feel like a lot of stand-up comedians, when they're first starting out and they're doing open mics to like 4 other comedians who are also at the open mic, a lot of people have this bit where they're the sports broadcaster. You know, it's just this segment of, all right, we're here at Fenway Park where the Boston Red Sox take on the Baltimore Orioles. And I just got to say, as Manny Machado steps up to the plate, that my wife is a solid whorebag who happened to go over to Thom Brenneman, and the ball misses outside 2-1. There's always that type of little comedy bit where the sports broadcaster is saying something and then he deviates away to call the play. And that's exactly what happened to Thom. Thom is going through a career-changing experience, and he's going through his apology for that, and they hit a home run, and he calls the home run. I mean, that's got to be worst case scenario as you're apologizing, is that someone hits a fucking moonshot to the outfield. Like, he's got to be like, God damn it, I'm here of trying to apologize for the biggest bonehead move I've done in my probably 20 plus careers in broadcasting, and now I have to say that so-and-so hit a fucking dinger. So I guess the big question is, will he get his job back? And I think that he probably should. Look, I'm not gay, so I'm not the right person to ask this, but in my opinion, what he said was not hostile towards the gay community. You know, he wasn't like, all these people need to die and I hate their lifestyle choices. He said something which also, like, who is he talking to about the blank capital of the world? Like, is there someone in the truck where he's having this conversation with him? I just don't understand how it even comes to light, this topic. So do I think he deserves a second chance? I do. I think a lot of people deserve second chances, especially with shit like this. However, Thom has been in the game for a long time. And if you have something covering your ears that you can hear shit out of, and I'm talking about headphones, you shouldn't be saying those words, because guess what? You're being recorded somewhere, Thom. If you have fucking headphones on, you're being recorded. So there's, in my opinion, there's 3 words, the big 3, that if you say them, your ass is canceled. And that was what Thom said. 1, the F word for homosexuals. 2, the N word, self-explanatory. And 3, the K word for Jewish people. I think those are the big 3 where if you say them, you're done. You are going to get fired. So if you have something covering your fucking ears and something that records you in front of you, just don't say those. Regardless of if you think you're on commercial break. Just don't say them. In fact, you should never say them, period. So if Thom never gets his job back, will I be upset? No, not really. He probably should have to sit the next couple games out. And by couple games, I mean maybe 1 or 2 seasons. I don't see him ever coming back for the Reds, and that sucks for Thom. Change it to Tom. But that's just the way the cookie crumbles. If you say some stupid-ass shit like this, you're going to pay the consequences for it. So some unintentionally funny shit in the sporting world. It's also horrible. He said it. I got to preface that again. I obviously don't condone that shit, but I won't lie. I laughed when he was apologizing and the guy hit the home run. If you don't think that's funny, you don't know what comedy is. You just don't know what it is. So, Thom, we wish you all the best of luck. I'm going to follow this story. We're going to report back if Thom ever gets back in the broadcast booth. But changing gears. I'm still quarantining out here in LA, guys. I'm not really going out to the bars. I don't see too many people, and I'm getting lazy. And when I get lazy, I get fat. And it's the fattest I've ever been. I am a chubby little monkey right now. I'm tipping the scales at 215. I usually weigh 185 pounds. I'm at 215 right now. It's the fattest I've ever been. And we don't have any sponsorships on Hot Black Coffee because we're just a little old pod. But if I were to be sponsored by someone, it should be DoorDash. Excuse me, I hiccuped right there. Because all I'm doing right now is ordering fucking delivery food and sitting on my ass watching sports. And the pounds have started to pack on. And I don't like to make excuses. I am not an excuse guy. But this whole quarantine thing has made me the laziest piece of shit in the world. And what I'm going to do is use Hot Black Coffee to motivate myself. Because I really don't have anyone being like, dude, you look like shit. You're a fat piece of shit right now. Because I'm not going out. I'm not seeing my friends. I'm not seeing anybody. I'm like a caveman just dwelling in my own loneliness right now. So I need to lose some weight. I'm going to lose some weight, and we're going to talk about it on the podcast, my weight loss journey. It begins today. I want to get down to, like 185 pounds before I'm right below Joe Rogan. So like I said, in the middle of November, election time, I'm going to be right below Joe Rogan, and I'm also going to be at my fighting weight, which is 185. So we are going to be talking about my exercise and diet a little bit on the podcast. I hope that's not too boring for you guys, but I'm trying to cut out the pizza. I'm trying to cut out the pasta. I'm an Italian. I fucking love that type of food. But I think we're going greens, guys. I think we're going full on greens. Little protein and a lot of greens. And we're going to try to cut this weight out before the world returns to normal, which I hope at some point it does. But without further ado, it is time to jump over to the interview with Aquaman himself, Mr. Connor Gallagher. So, Connor, welcome on in to the HBC podcast, my friend. All right, so we welcome in the first real guest ever of Hot Black Coffee. We had Bob's assistant on last week, Aaron Steinberg, but he doesn't qualify as the first guest. So, Connor Gallagher, welcome on to the program, my longtime buddy. Thank you for coming in.
Hey, Scotty, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me, and glad we finally made this happen.
Of course. So I've had a lot of DMs from people being like, who are you going to have on for guests? Like, are you going to have Bob on? Are you going to have all these celebrity people? And like, I don't really give a fuck about the following or who you are. I just want to find people who are passionate about whatever they do. And I got a quick story about Connor's passion. And this was my senior year of college. I came out to visit you, Connor, at right on Catalina Island. And Connor had been on a skiing trip, right? You were on a ski trip?
Yeah, I was on a ski trip with my brother in Tahoe. Yep.
You were on this trip in Tahoe, and what happened? You ran into a tree or something? You broke your leg?
Yeah, well, so I was out in California on my way to go back to Catalina to work. And my brother wanted me to come skiing with him first. And I thought, it'd be pretty shitty if I hurt myself skiing and wouldn't be able to go back to work in Catalina. And so I was being really careful and avoided all the tough stuff. And my brother convinced me to go down this one crazy chute on the backside of Tahoe or the Nevada side, I guess, and broke my leg. Yeah, like 3 days before I was supposed to go back to Catalina.
And it was like a pretty serious break too, right? Like what bone was it?
It was my tibia, I think, the bigger one. Yeah, I did a spiral fracture. Basically, the bone just sort of lifted off of itself. I had to do the whole ski patrol thing, and yeah, it was not a great experience. I flew back east actually to Boston, and my parents met me there, and then drove me to Vermont where I had my surgery. So it was like a week before I had surgery too. And it's got a big old rod in there.
So I bring this up because like I said, was planning on going to visit Connor and Catalina to do some snorkeling, some outdoor adventures, hiking, et cetera, et cetera. But obviously Connor broke his leg. So I went out there, and this was probably 4 months removed from surgery? Maybe a little.
Not even. I don't think. I think it was a month or two. Yeah.
So I get there, and Connor is on crutches. He's hobbling around. But obviously me and another kid I went with, we still wanted to go out and do activities and get in the water. And Connor had no problem with doing that. He a fresh broken leg, and he was crutching from the beach down to the water, would throw his crutches in the sand, and then you would just go off and fucking snorkel. And it was at that point I was like, this dude loves being in the water. You're just very passionate about the ocean, and that's why I wanted to have you on, because I love people who are passionate about whatever the fuck they're doing.
Thanks, man. I hadn't thought about that in a long time. That's a great story. And yeah, I would have my friends I would crutch down to the beach. My friends would carry my scuba tank on their back. I'd get in the water. They'd like float my gear to me. I'd hand them my crutches, get my gear on. Then they'd go back and get their gear, and we'd go. And yeah, I just kicked with one leg. And when you're in the water, weight doesn't matter. So it was actually a perfect place to have a broken leg.
In the water than to be crutching around on land, right?
Yeah, it was actually quite comfortable. So everyone around camp was kind of sick of me because I was just like going out on the water all the time and looking for dolphins and like going diving and just living the life without having to work. Somehow I conned my way to get back and live there without actually working, which is pretty epic.
So I was saying in the intro to this episode that I was calling you an oceanographer, and he can fact check me on this. I don't know.
Yeah, right.
I don't know what an oceanographer is. So are you an oceanographer, and what is an oceanographer?
So I am not an oceanographer, but I appreciate the effort. I guess I'm a biologist, but I think that's even a stretch. I majored in biology in college, so if that makes me a biologist, fine. An oceanographer just studies like the physics of the ocean, basically. So waves and temperature and salinity and just all that. There's all sorts of things you could study in the huge field that is oceanography. But there is like biological oceanography and physical oceanography, chemical, all that stuff.
All outside.
Since I'm not really a scientist. What's that?
All outside my pay grade, stuff I know nothing about.
Yeah, even me, I don't know a whole lot about anymore. I understand science enough to work in like filmmaking that surrounds wildlife and documentary about nature and stuff like that. So environmental.
So that's how I prefaced it. I was like, he might be an oceanographer, but I think he's more so a videographer that kind of specializes in marine studies.
Yeah, that's accurate. And it's funny you say videographer because I somehow all of my friends love to bust my balls. It doesn't matter who they are. I just somehow surround myself with people who just love giving me shit. And one day I think I was lamenting the term videographer just because it just feels like a wedding videographer. Right. And like I don't want to be that. I don't want to be a videographer. So but all my friends are just like, oh yeah, how was your videographing today and shit like that, and just really gets under my skin. But I mean filmmakers, documentary filmmaker, cameraman, like when I'm doing wildlife stuff it's more like cameraman, assistant camera. There's all sorts of titles. I don't know, these days you kind of got to do a lot of shit. Right.
Would you ever just call yourself a content creator?
I don't think I fall. I mean, that's really your expertise, man. What's that?
That's worse than being a videographer. If you title yourself a content creator, that's kind of like a cringy title for me.
Oh yeah, because that's something that you would understand better than I would.
Right. Like when I think content creator, I think of some chick like posting her titties on Instagram.
Right, and that is indeed content. I mean, and the world runs on it, but I'm not.
So I kind of know how you got your start in all the videographer stuff from our days editing together Jackass.
That's right.
And I kind of want to. I probably have asked you for this footage like multiple times, but we might have to dub in some of our in our childhood with a good old Jackass video.
I think we should. Yeah, I have it somewhere, and I think I've sent it to you, but that's okay.
Yeah. Looking back on it real quick, it's crazy that we had so much passion for doing that type of stuff, because we weren't posting it on YouTube, and like we weren't doing it for views
Yeah.
or anything. Like we were just in it for the Jackass game.
Yeah, that's for the love of the game right there. That's a really good point.
We could be TikTok famous if we were born, I don't know, 10 years later.
I know. Yeah, life could have been really different. But back then it was just mini DV cams and editing on my Sony Vaio desktop and throwing in random AC/DC songs to us, pushing each other off like hills and shopping carts.
Well, it made for some great footage. So
yeah, and we still got it.
Yeah, if we can find it, I'm gonna definitely gonna advertise that for our childhood past.
Yeah, I think we have it. And the funny thing about that is the way I had to edit it back then was I had to set up a digital camera filming the TV that was playing our video. So it's just like shit quality to begin with, and then I'm like recording the TV. It's ridiculous.
Whatever you have to figure it out.
Yeah. Well, and you might have forgotten about our questionable other videos that we've done, like the Diary of Anne Frank and Liddy.
We did a lot of projects.
because Scotty and Brenda didn't really particularly want to write anything, and roped me into making a video, which somehow we got amazing grades on, and they were just brutally awful.
I mean, I was always looking for the easy way out, and the easy way out is let's make a video and Connor will edit it and we'll get an A.
Yeah, and all it was a terrible like rendition of the story that neither of you had actually read.
Right, yeah, we read the book. Only you read the book.
And yeah, it worked out. So here we are.
I don't want to go too far into our childhood, because I think only me and you will find it interesting.
Yes,
what I do want to talk about is like what experience was it where you were like, I want to work in the ocean all the time. Like this is what I want to be doing.
Yeah, I think, growing up on the East Coast, especially in Vermont, the one New England state without any water, it was strange that I ended up finding myself so into the ocean. I think it started when I was really young and watching PBS, like nature documentaries. I think just the wildness of what I saw in coral reef, like documentary specials, just totally blew me away. And it just felt like such a different world, and where like anything could happen and be possible. So that always got me stoked. And then when I went to Maine and stuff for vacation, I'd just like look in the tide pools, and like if I found a crab, my fucking head would explode. I was so pumped. And it just kind of went from there. Like the Boston Aquarium was like one of my favorite places to go, and all this stuff. And then when I went to college, I just kept gravitating more and more towards like marine science classes and stuff. But science itself was just sort of dry for me. And when I moved to Catalina and saw the California's kelp forest and all the life and dolphins and sharks and all sorts of shit, just that, I mean, truly blew my mind. Yeah. And from then on, I was trying to figure out, okay, how do I turn this love of being in the water and experiencing wildlife and all that comes with it into a job. And it started to work out, which is good.
Yeah. So for people who don't know, Simi and Catalina is a small island off the coast of California. I'm not sure. What do you think the population of Catalina is? I know there's that one little cove, Avalon, which is kind of densely populated, but outside of that, it's a pretty deserted island. Yeah.
It's I think like 87% of it is basically parkland, conservancy land, so nobody lives there. They estimate somewhere between 5,000 and like 8,000 people live on the island, because I think there's some undocumented people, so it's a little harder for them to get an accurate count. But most of it is just like arid desert land. It just looks like if you went east of LA into the mountains, it kind of looks like that. But the kelp forests around it are just magnificent. They're not doing amazing right now, but when they're really pumping and full of life, they're some of the best diving in the world for sure.
Why do you say it's not doing that well?
So there's been that, if you remember the blob that happened a couple of years back, the big weather pattern where there's big patch of warm water in the Pacific. All that warm water wasn't good for kelp, and a couple big storms just sort of ripped it all out. And then another algae came in and been fighting for its place on the reef. So there's a lot of places that even you snorkeled with me that haven't recovered. And then you pair that with like a overpopulation of purple sea urchins that eat the kelp. So, everything's all these ecosystems are in balance, and once things start to fall out, it's hard for them to recover.
Yeah.
But it's getting better in some spots.
Over your duration of being in the water and working on the ocean pretty much daily at this point, do you find that pollution and how the ocean is as a whole is going downhill pretty rapidly, or do you think we're starting to make some changes that are going to turn that around?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both. I live in Monterey, Monterey Bay, just north of you guys by a few hours. And the ocean here feels pretty healthy.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm out here, I'm seeing otters and whales all the time, and tons of sea lions, and the kelp up here is super healthy. So I wouldn't say that I see a lot of signs here that make me feel like things are taking a turn for the worse. When I go to places like coral reefs in Central America and in Mexico and in Hawaii, that's when you start to feel like things are looking pretty bad, just because those ecosystems are a bit more sensitive to changes in the ocean, and I have seen some kind of scary things, and just sad. It's just sad, when you see reefs that are bleached and missing fish and stuff like that.
That's what I was going to bring up. Is I feel like it's most evident on the coral reefs where they're starting to bleach, which I guess is they're losing all their color. Is kind of like the graveyard of the ocean right now. When I read stuff about the coral reefs, that's the point where I'm like, it seems like everything's going downhill with the ocean and kind of like humanity in general. So I guess it's positive to hear that Monterey is still a healthy ecosystem and things are going well. Now, does coral reef get bleached because of the water temperature, or like why is the coral dying?
Yeah, corals tend to be pretty sensitive to water temperature and also the acidity or the pH of the water. And so as you get more carbon dioxide in the air, as it also is a greenhouse gas that allows for more warming of the earth and then the oceans, but it also combines with seawater and creates this carbonic acid, very light acid, but it's enough, and it starts to wear down the structures of the coral. So they're super sensitive to both pH and temperature. And so when they bleach, usually that means that I believe the algae that is actually living with them, they have a symbiotic relationship, or a lot of them do, with algae, and the algae inside them are dying, which is why they lose their color.
Gotcha. I feel like the coral reef is such a huge part of the ocean, primarily because so many tourists will go to these resorts, right, and get hotel scuba certified, where you can go out for one day and you can dive the coral reefs or do whatever dive you're doing. And as the coral reef continues to die more and more, people who go into the ocean and don't have the ability to see this beautiful organism, I'm not even sure what coral really is, but when that's all dead, people kind of lose their initial drive to learn about the ocean. Because I remember I went to the Bahamas and I did the hotel certification, and I went and saw these beautiful coral reefs. And now as they die, people's first interaction with the ocean is not as impactful as it may have been 10 years ago.
Yeah, that's a super good point, Scotty. It's like I said, it's really sad when you see it. And I think a lot of people might go for a scuba dive on their first time in the Bahamas or wherever and just think, oh, well, it wasn't that great anyway, so why am I bothering,
Right.
Making any efforts or demands for it to be protected or things to change. And it's even, I think about kids these days who go and see things, and even we missed a ton of the best life in the ocean when we were kids. I mean, it was already starting to show signs of destruction on coral reefs especially, but nowadays it does seem like it's hard to show kids what nature actually looks like, because it's changing so quickly, and a lot of it is disappearing right before our eyes.
Right, which I honestly think is the best way to learn is hands-on experience. So when you're missing out on this stuff, I think it's a scary sign into the future of what could happen. But
Yeah,
changing paces here a little bit. As
sure.
you went to college in Maine, as you can see behind me, the jaws. I'm a huge shark guy.
Yeah, I remember that.
And last episode, I talked about the shark attack in Maine, which unfortunately took the life of a young lady who was training for, I believe it was a triathlon.
Okay, yeah.
I think it was the first reported shark attack in Maine in almost 100 years. It's very, very rare to happen. So
Yeah.
I'm curious as to some of your interactions with white sharks or just sharks in general, and just kind of your experiences dealing with the ocean's elite here.
Yeah, they're certainly the ocean's elite. Yeah, that was a crazy story and really sad to hear about that woman passing away. Um, and yeah, having gone to school in Maine, I know that there's the occasional white sharks are around there, but as you know, Cape Cod has been seeing the biggest uptick, at least in New England, with white sharks being present because of the seals. So that was surprising to me. And I agree, it would be quite terrifying to have that experience. And so it was
Have you
really
been in
sad.
the water with a white shark before?
I probably is the answer to that. Around here, the number of sightings for scuba divers has gone up. And I think that's a bit mixed with more social media and more communication about diving and diving conditions and stuff. But I know a number of people in my immediate diving community that have just had sharks just cruise past them or just show up in their field of view suddenly.
What's the play there? You're out diving. You're not anticipating seeing a white shark, and that guy he swims above you or he swims to the side of you. What do you do in that interaction? Do you just chill?
I'm not sure I know the exact right answer. I'll throw that out there.
Okay.
Most people chill. I think the thing to not do is to like swim fast away. That would probably suggest that you might be more of a prey as well. I usually am carrying a camera, so that's the benefit, like as a thing to like. What's that?
I said that's going to protect you. A camera, if a white shark wants it, he's going to fucking grab you. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, there's enough that you can like put it in their mouth and stuff, and sharks, for all their characteristics that are shown on TV and in movies, they actually are like super curious and cautious. So I'll try to answer that question, but in my experience, I've seen them from both a ton. I've seen like the younger ones that are in the like 6 to 10 foot range, and I've seen the big daddies and mamas that are 14 to 17 feet, massive, that are definitely killing seals and sea lions on a regular basis. And what really strikes me about them is that some of them are just like really aggressive and go and try to and hit the seal decoy, because that's what we were doing. We were tagging sharks, and there's a seal decoy that brings them close to the boat. So some of them will just like hammer the decoy, and others you'll just sort of watch them like cruise under and like take a look, and several times they'll actually make passes and really investigate. Okay, what is this thing? Is this food, etc. And they have to be pretty cautious because their prey, seals and sea lions, can actually deal quite a bit of damage to them. If they lost their eyesight from like a scratch or a bite from a seal, that would be really devastating for a shark, because they're mainly visual hunters, and so they have to be careful too.
So Connor sent me over a bunch of his footage for me to check out before we did this interview. And one of the videos Connor sent me was paddleboarders out on the California coast, where they're, I would imagine 100, 200 yards from the shore, and they're paddling, and there's like 4 or 5 white sharks just directly below them. And it goes back to your like exploratory bites or curiosity or whatever.
Yeah.
A lot of these attacks, what I've read from, is that they're kind of just like checking you out. They want to know if you're a seal or whatever. One of the new theories I've heard, and I want you to debunk this theory because it's
okay,
is that when a white shark comes up and attacks a human, they'll really attack, and then swim away. And then humans have the ability where if someone else is in the water, they will come over and aid you out. They'll help you get out of the water pretty, as soon as possible, as opposed to a seal gets attacked and he's fucked. He's just laying there and the shark will come back and eat you and devour you.
Right.
With humans, we're able to get out of the water pretty quickly. If a shark came up and attacked you and you were out there all by your lonesome, that shark is going to come back.
Do I think that shark's going to come back?
Yeah, like finish off the job.
It depends. Yeah, I think it depends on the shark, how hungry they are. In Australia, it seems that the Australian white sharks are just like meaner, and they kill people more regularly. Like people that they can tell are people and not seals, like scuba divers. They're not really exhibiting many signs of being a seal. They don't move like a seal. They don't look like a seal. They blow bubbles all the time. They have a big old tank on their back, and yet they've still killed them.
Right.
So the California white sharks, I feel like, are like nicer.
Are they chill?
Possible?
Cali?
They're like Cali chill. Yeah, maybe a little bit more. I don't know. They seem like they do a bit more. It's more of like an accident, right? And so we actually unfortunately had a surfer who was killed just like a month or two before the main accident. We had a surfer killed up by Santa Cruz, which is just 3-4 miles from where that paddleboarding video took place. And this guy just, he just had like an artery cut in such a way on his leg when he bled out and didn't make it. But the shark didn't come back. He was on a surfboard, and that's typically what happens. It's like, oh shit, this is not what I was looking for. But if the damage is done, when it's like a test bite can still be a ton of damage to a human.
So you're not really buying the idea that if a human was attacked and they just laid out there in the water, the shark isn't coming back. You think he knows it's not their typical prey?
Well, we have a different type of blood too, so we actually would taste different than a marine mammal. Like we have.
I know you want to protect the animals because you're the fucking ocean guy, but I mean, give me the real details here.
I think if the shark were super hungry, for sure it's possible that it can come back, or maybe another shark could smell the blood. But you do fundamentally smell and taste different than their normal prey. So I think there's going to be, no matter what, there's going to be like, this isn't normally what I eat.
Right.
But if I'm a starving shark and I really need food, which is probably not the case around the California coast because it's full of seals and sea lions. There's so much food around here that I don't think there's tons of starving sharks. So I'm going to give it a maybe.
Okay.
If you're in Australia, probably. Let's just say that based on what I've heard.
Australia is not it's Africa, right? Where the white sharks are breaching.
Yeah, although they breach here sometimes too.
They do?
You can see them, yeah. Maybe not on when they're hitting a seal, but I've seen them, just out of the corner of my eye when I'm doing shark tagging. All of a sudden, a big splash and there's a shark had breached.
Yeah. Well, moving away from shark attacks, kind of similar territory. What is like the scariest experience you've had in the water? Yeah,
I think, in the water there's not been a ton when I've been diving or free diving. Most of the scary moments when I'm in the water is like I'm diving, I'm looking at something, and some big flash of something comes by in my peripheral vision, and it's like a sea lion, but in the moment I'm like, holy shit, what the fuck is that?
Right, because it comes up.
And I'm like, that's a shark, holy shit, and then your body just like has this subconscious reaction to that type of thing. So those are the moments where I'm just like
see, that's where I panic and probably drown, because when I'm snorkeling or
spit out your regulator,
I'm like, there's a shark behind me all the time.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know how I'll get over that fear, to be honest.
There's some research that suggests that when you are in the water and you feel, quote, sharky, that's like a thing that people talk about where they're like, oh man, I was out there and it just felt real sharky.
That's right.
That there's some truth to that. Like the human body can actually like read vibes. And so if you're out there and you feel kind of sharky, you might actually want to come in. That's what some science says.
God, I mean, I'll never go in the water again. I feel sharky every time my toes touch sand.
Your toes are in it. Yeah, that's right. But as far as scary moments on the water, it's usually been around humpback whales. actually, as awesome as humpbacks are and how much I love them. They are big, and when they're in their feeding mode, they can be a little scary. So one time, I'll tell a story quickly. I was out there working with a guy, and we were trying to film humpback whales like feeding. And the way they feed is they like corral the bait with bait fish, like anchovies or sardine. They corral it all at the top of the water in this big bait ball, and then they come up from underneath and lunge through it with their mouths wide open, hit the surface, and then close their mouths and filter out all the water and keep the fish. What's that?
It's kind of like a Pinocchio scenario. Just get swallowed.
Yeah, right. Kind of like Pinocchio. But these are so we were out there. We found this epic, massive bait ball. Like there's birds going on, sea lions. It was fantastic, perfect opportunity. So we sort of park off of it with our boat floating around, getting a big gimbal stabilized camera set up, like drone set up and stuff like that. And what we didn't realize was that we actually had drifted back onto the bait ball while we were getting ready. And I'm at the back of the boat, and all of a sudden I just hear this splash, and I look up, and I had to have been like 15 feet away. This one humpback had just lunged, and it was just out of the water, and they kind of have a little hang time above the water, and then they start falling back. And this thing was going to hit our boat, no question. And I started sort of swearing, I guess. I don't really know what I said, but the guy I was with just like popped it into gear really fast. And the whale like just missed the stern of the boat, but sent this huge wave over the back and just like soaked all of our gear.
I'm sure your boat was just like 20, 25 feet.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So something like 20,
which is probably the same size as a humpback whale, right?
No, that whale is probably 40 feet. I mean, it's probably bigger, but a significant amount. And so, what's that?
Dwarfing your boat a little bit then.
Yeah. And I'm like, my hands are fucking shaking, and I'm like trying to dry off all our gear. And I just like saw this, building out of the water falling towards me. So feeding humpback whales can be kind of scary, especially in water like Monterey, because it's not super clear.
Yeah.
They could definitely do some
damage. I feel like a lot of people are like, whales are the friendliest creatures in the sea, potentially.
Yeah, I mean, I think they are cool and friendly, but if they're hungry, I don't think they really give a shit. They'll try to avoid you, but...
Yeah. That's one of the craziest things with orcas to me, is that they don't attack people ever.
Right. There's been no recorded wild orca attack on a human. Yeah.
Which kind of leads me into my next question of one of my favorite documentaries of the past. I mean, I'm kind of dating myself now. It's probably 5 years from the release point, but is Blackfish. I loved Blackfish. I thought it was super informational about the captivity of animals like killer whales, and I even think dolphins and seals. What do you think of those documentaries where the public really grabs onto those and helps support the cause? Like how huge is that for marine studies as a whole?
Yeah, I think that films like Blackfish especially did really sort of start to change the conversation around animal captivity. And, I have a lot of friends who feel pretty strongly against that film, actually. A lot of my friends through various work I've done actually like worked at SeaWorld or worked at a zoo or an aquarium or stuff. So there actually is a lot of differing opinions around that film and the captivity of animals and stuff. It definitely brought those issues to the forefront for the public. And what was interesting is so many people have been to SeaWorld, right? And so many people's visions of what an orca is this like thing that puts people on their nose and like does a backflip for you and splashes you and Shamu and all that bullshit. Right. I personally think that orcas definitely should not be in captivity. I think there's benefits and huge value to having animals in zoos and aquariums, especially animals that wouldn't survive otherwise in the wild. I think the argument can certainly be made that kids are inspired to protect these animals and learn about them and become scientists one day or whatever. There's plenty of research that can be done in captivity, but the orcas are just like, they're so fucking smart. They're
functioning on a different level than other animals, correct?
Yeah. I mean, they're a super intelligent mammal, and I think we as humans think that our intelligence level is so special, but orcas certainly, the whales definitely are super intelligent, and they're just just imagine living your life in a fucking bathtub,
Right.
and you've used to the entire world, the entire ocean. And I've seen those guys take down gray whale babies. Like, those are serious fucking predators. And they take down huge sea lions and elephant seals, and just they're the wolves of the seas, what they're known as. So to think of them as just living in this fucking bathtub and doing backflips, it's no wonder they go insane.
Right. I mean, my biggest thing from that documentary, and I don't know how you could ever be in support of having killer whales in captivity, but when the mother whale was crying for like 3 days straight when they took the baby away, like if you see that footage and you're still on board for these animals being in aquariums or whatever, I think you have a few screws loose, to say.
Yeah, I mean, that's fucking heart-wrenching. And so you do really realize that there's these relationships and intelligence that goes beyond what we thought animals were capable of.
For sure.
There's also,
it's like you when you draw that line between educating the public on these animals or just abusing them, it's a fine line to walk, because obviously you want to be able to get the public's interest in these animals, which I don't know if SeaWorld was actually trying to do that, or if they just wanted to get their bottom line up with having these creatures in the tank. But there's got to be a different way to educate the masses, other than like you said, keeping them in the bathtub.
Yeah, well, I know that they have committed to ending their orca program, and I think it was in large part to the film of Blackfish and people's reaction to it. I mean, and going back to their relationships, there was an orca that in Seattle, off of Seattle, the San Juan Islands area. The mother lost her baby within a couple of days after it was born, and she carried the baby's body around for like 3 weeks, right? Luckily, there's good news, is that she's pregnant again. So hopefully that one will survive. But yeah, I mean, it's like a funeral procession for this mother for 17 days. There's obviously a ton of intelligence and love between the orcas that happens.
That was in my opinion some of the greatest footage, was the drone video of the orcas kind of breaching around your boat and like swimming underneath it. And the boat was just incredible stuff. And I'll dub that into the video as well. But what have you found is like kind of the recipe for viral like marine footage? So like my job obviously is we want a lot of clicks, we want a lot of views. What type of videos in your experience have been like the crowd pleasers?
Yeah, that's a great question. And often what I've realized is what I think is super cool is not what the crowd necessarily thinks is super cool. So that's something. Migrating
is interesting.
Yeah, exactly. So I have to think about that. And it's something that's like unexpected. I think that's all. It's like short form, unexpected, funny always helps, or just like awe-inspiring.
Right.
And I've been lucky enough to have a ton of amazing experiences in Monterey, a lot of which don't really get a ton of attention, in part because sometimes I'm just like, social media is not a thing I like to do a ton, but also in part that just there's so much content being created out there. But I have had a few good viral hits, I guess, at least one anyway, that if you want to, I can talk about that.
Yeah. Dive into it.
So yeah, we were out just diving one day. I think I did 4 dives. We had just this amazing water quality, and I convinced my buddy to go one more time at night. And
by the way, that is the most fucked up shit ever. Night diving, you couldn't pay me enough money to get into the black depths of the ocean at night.
Yeah.
Like, what is that like? Like the visibility, even with a massive underwater flashlight, I don't know what you call it. It has to be what?
Just about that. Yeah, I mean, your world is sort of reduced to whatever your light can produce.
Terrifying.
And if the visibility is shitty, it's even smaller than that. I did this on night. What did you say?
You like night dives? Like, is that? a thing that you seek out, or is it like I want to go see some I don't even know, creatures that are nocturnal in the ocean?
Well, as part of that, yeah, there's definitely some animals that come out at night that you wouldn't normally see. I'd say that when I lived on Catalina, I did way more night diving.
Uh-huh.
The water's super clear there, and the lights, actually, you could get quite a bit of visibility if you had a good light.
Right.
Around here, it is a little, it's spooky, but like when it comes to sharks, like I said, they're such visual predators that I would never think, and I don't think there's much evidence that a shark, like a white shark,
Right.
is hunting at night, because it's just like, how would they even go about doing that?
Mhm.
They do have plenty of other senses that they use to hunt, but I don't think you'd ever have to worry about them
This might be
attacking you.
the dumbest question I asked during the interview. Do sharks sleep?
Hit me.
Like, how do they sleep?
Whew, that is a great question. I actually don't know the answer specifically to that one.
Uh-huh.
So white sharks are like many sharks, not all sharks, but they have to continue to swim. You might know that, right? In order to breathe, they have to get the water to go over their gills, and so they have to continue to swim. So I think they do go into some sort of like tonic sort of sleep-like state, but they're still sort of cruising. So it's not like they stop and snooze for 4 hours or something.
Such a weird animal.
They are weird. They're very evolutionarily old. They're pretty incredible though, and hopefully you'll be able to come up here sometime and we can like go see one, because there's something to be said from looking at them when they're in the water, and you kind of get a different perspective of them.
Yeah, you'll maybe get me during the day. At night, there's just
Yeah, no chance.
zero chance. What what do you think of the evolution of Shark Week? I was saying on the last episode, I've always been a huge Shark Week guy, even before it was like the Twitter cool thing to say, like, this is Shark Week.
You were. I can vouch for that.
Okay, thank you, because I needed someone to back me on liking it before the Twitter world.
Yeah, I think we were probably like 12 or something, and I called you up to go do something in the middle of August, and you're like, nah, man, like, it's fucking Shark Week. I gotta watch Shark Week.
It was the best shit ever, because it was shows only about attacks, which obviously in the wrong light. But now with Shark Week, you have the hokey bullshit of like Mike Tyson fighting a shark, and
right, Jesus,
who wasn't it not who's the Michael Phelps, Michael Phelps,
right.
You've worked on Shark Week. What in your opinion is how that week is going?
It's been sort of trending that way for a long time. Yeah. Kind of a lot of bullshit. I can just say it's a ton of bullshit and sensationalizing everything. So the episode I worked on was like purely science based, and it was about putting camera tags on white sharks to see what they do when we can't watch them. So I think and it did really well, actually. It was like the finale of Shark Week a couple of years ago, and lots of people watched it and loved it. So I think there is a place for real science that can be entertaining too. But the Michael Phelps one, I tuned in for a little bit to check it out, and then suddenly he was racing like a digital shark or something, and I was just like, what the fuck is this?
Advertise it and put him in the water against an actual shark. I don't want shark.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of bullshit. So I don't watch it very often. I have a couple of friends who've worked on shows. My friend Mark worked on this Workaholics episode. I don't know if you saw that, but I know that you guys just did the episode with Adam Devine.
Yeah.
But there's a really good one this year. He was
on Shark Week. I think it was host one year.
Oh yeah. Well, this episode he was kind of the host. It was a whole like new format. I really thought it was pretty good. There was some good science in there, and it was like comedic, and it just felt like, okay, if we're gonna be like make this kind of a joke, like let's at least acknowledge that it's kind of a joke. And then I don't know, it was fun. I learned some shit, and it was just different. So I think there's a place for that kind of show. But most of like Killer Jaws 6, I'm like, fuck off, man.
Which, as a producer of these shows, that kind of has to be the goal. Let's make this entertaining, but let's also put some information in here where the average idiot American is going to walk away knowing Jaws isn't an actual premise to how sharks act.
Yeah, I think they oscillate somewhere between like trying to change the Jaws characterization of white sharks, that they're just these man eaters, and then half the other shows are like,
don't get
this
in.
guy get the fuck out of the water. I'm just like, wait, I thought you guys sort of committed to protecting sharks and like changing their status and but those are what brings the dollars in. So
for sure, I'm definitely a part of the audience where it's like, show me blood in the water. I want to see people getting fucked up. Obviously, it's a horrible thing, but that's what's entertaining to me when it comes to Shark Week.
Yeah, and I understand that. It's thrilling.
So the last topic I want to touch on before I let you go is your film Rock Paper Fish, which is all about salmon, and is it the breeding of salmon? If you just want to kind of touch light on that film. Obviously, you went up to Alaska to film this, so just talk about what it was like up there and your experiences filming that.
Sure. Yes. So Rock Paper Fish is about salmon. That's true, but it's also about a couple communities in Southeast Alaska, and it's also about mining. Mm-hmm. So they actually directed the film with someone that we both played baseball with back in the day, Colin Erisman. So there's another connection there.
Probably couldn't
kind of funny,
all like me, but I'm sure he's a fine guy.
Yeah, he's a good guy, very good guy. We would have loved to have you though. Anyway, so we actually directed a different film about mining in Southeast Alaska called Irreparable Harm a year before. And so we were working with some folks up there who said, hey, there's this like new mining project happening in this small Alaska Native, near this Alaska Native community, as well as a white community called Klukwan is the Alaska Native, and Haines is the white or settler community up there. And basically, the story is sort of about what these large-scale industrial, like mining and resource extraction projects, can do to small communities. Okay. Much like the rest of the United States, this community is very easily divided, and so you have people who move to this place, specifically Haines. They move to this place because they love the outdoors. They love to go fishing. You know, they are hippies. You know, they call them greenies in the town is their term. And then there's like the kind of more conservative, there's stickers on trucks up there that was like mine it, log it, kill it. So there's like that side of the town too. And so what's that?
Your economic gain.
Yeah, right. So there's the whole question of like jobs versus the environment. And then, you know, the other argument as well, if there's a disastrous mining accident, then all the fishing jobs will be gone. Right. So the story, is really about the Tlingit people who have lived in that community of Klukwan for thousands of years, and their needs and opinions not really being listened to and appreciated, as well as the community of Haines and the sort of social fabric that gets torn apart and friendships that fall apart when it comes to these things, because people start feeling really strongly one way or the other, and losing friendships, and it's kind of messy.
Where do you see it trending? Is it going towards mining, or is it going towards protecting the beautiful environment they have up there?
Yeah, 6 months ago, I probably would have told you, I think it's going towards becoming a mine. I think there's still a chance for sure. But interestingly, there's another element that they pull out of the ground as part of the mining called barite that's used in oil drilling. And so basically they like put all this waste rock into the oil well to cap it, to stop the pressure. And because of like the pandemic and the drop in oil price and all this stuff, their economic model to also pull that rock out of the earth and sell it, that suddenly that rock was worth less because the demand for oil had gone down around the world. And so suddenly their economic model doesn't work at all, and they can't actually become a mine. So that's sort of where things stand, is that it's not because people necessarily cared about the fish or the environment, or thought through what is this boom and bust economy going to look like in like 10 or 15 years when the mine leaves. Right. Unfortunately, that wasn't the thing that's currently stopping it. They're currently just stopping it because of fucking money, which is unfortunately how things typically go. But a win's a win, because those, I'm not sure if you've ever been to Alaska, but my God, it is just fucking amazing. Just so gorgeous, and so much life. And, we saw bears and salmon and eagles were everywhere, moose, and just the most beautiful scenery you could imagine.
Yeah.
So it was pretty hard to think about a mine being operated up in the mountains above this watersheds of the Chilkat River there.
That trickles down way beyond salmon too. I mean, once you start fucking with the salmon, you're fucking with the bears, which fucks with everything. So it's definitely the trickle down effect when you start diving into changing an environment like that.
Yeah. And then, the pro mine people will say that there's no, their mining has come so far and there's no risk of an accident, et cetera. But
which is bullshit.
Yeah, it's mostly bullshit. Yeah, there's always
like the ship's unsinkable, but in reality, unsinkable.
Right. And you're absolutely right. When the salmon either get toxic metals in their body that goes up the food chain through the eagles and the bears, or they just stop coming. And then what happens to that community that's relying on fish? And some of the best salmon in the world comes out of those communities, and in other parts of Alaska. And a lot of people kind of don't appreciate the flavor of a wild salmon compared to a farm salmon. Like, I think we're losing that distinction sometimes. But if you have
bring that up, that we've had conversations, obviously, when we're not recording, about the difference between wild salmon and farm raised salmon, and even to the point where farm raised salmon, there's different levels of like farming and the health of these fish, right?
Yeah, right.
What do you find is the most advantageous environment for farming salmon?
Well, it's hard to say. My position on farming salmon is, I understand that we need to produce more fish to feed more people.
Yeah.
The problems that are, in my mind, mainly around how we do it and the security of the pens that we're working on. Here's an example of a total failure. Is in I think it was Washington, or it might have been BC, somewhere in the Pacific Northwest. There is a pen of Atlantic farmed raised salmon that are being raised there. So they're not supposed to be in the Pacific Ocean. They're from an entirely different ocean, and yet that was the species that was decided to be raised there. And a storm came through and broke open the pen, and suddenly all these fish escaped and entered the ecosystem. So now you have this fish that's never been supposed to be in the Pacific Northwest starting to compete with wild fish for prey and for areas for reproducing and such. And we don't know the consequences entirely yet of those types of accidents, but it's not the only one that's ever happened.
Right. I mean,
further.
Go ahead. Sorry.
And just further, it's just we've got all these fucking dams all over the place, all over America. We had this weird infatuation with dams, and there was a purpose for them back then. But we fucking love to stop water and make a nice little lake that you can go water skiing on and shit. And so it just feels like all these farmed efforts and like fish ladders and fucking fish cannons, all the shit you see.
What's a fish
ladder? What's that?
What's a fish ladder?
Oh, a fish ladder is this, like, it's effectively a ladder with water in it, for all intents and purposes. And fish swim up this thing in order to get over a dam. So salmon have to return to where they're born to spawn.
To help fish travel.
Yes, so they can get over these dams that we've created, basically. And they don't always work super well. So anyway, my point is just that we've got all these dams, and all these solutions that we make are because we fucked everything up by putting these giant walls in the way of where the salmon are supposed to go home to reproduce. And so everything we do as far as farming and all this shit is trying to fix those mistakes, in my opinion. So I just say tear down the fucking dams, but that's where I land on that.
A lot of interesting things. We are running on almost 30, 40 minutes here, so I'm going to let you go, get you back in the water here, Aquaman.
Thanks, buddy.
I appreciate you coming on. The second ever guest on Hot Black Coffee, Mr. Connor Gallagher. If you guys want to go follow him, Connor Gallagher Productions on Instagram. He's got some cool videos and pictures. I will also put some videos that he's done on the HBCpod Instagram. So Connor, thank you, my dude. I appreciate you swinging by. Always a great conversation with you.
Yeah, man, it was really cool catching up with you. I miss you and stoked for your new podcast. And I'm pretty excited to get roasted by your listeners. It'll be kind of like my first time putting myself out there like this. So let's see. Let's see.
We are a small army of probably about 4 to 5 people, 3 of which I think you probably know. So we have a massive audience here at HBC.
Well, yeah, especially don't forget about the Scotty Wilson fan page that you created.
Yeah, the Scooty Wilson fan page. I did not create it, but yeah, they are big supporters of the pod. All right, dude.
Man.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Looking forward to seeing you soon, man. See ya.
There you have it, guys. A great interview with my buddy Connor Gallagher. He is just a man of the water. I mean, the kid he's a fish without gills, essentially. I think he's in the water more than he is on land, and that's what I love about the guy. I love passionate people. And like I was saying in the beginning of the interview, I've had a lot of people DM me being like, get so-and-so on, get this guy on, get this guy on. First off, I can't get A-list people on the podcast, guys. I understand Bob has 2.7 million people. I have 1,800, okay? So Leonardo DiCaprio, he ain't coming on my podcast. And to be honest, I don't even want to have those type of people on. I mean, I'm lying. I would obviously love to have Leo on the fucking podcast. But I want people who are passionate about whatever they're doing. Passion is important. In fact, I think passion is the most important thing when you're trying to start out a career or you're trying to live a fulfilling life. Be passionate about what you do, people. If you're going to do something, do it with your best foot forward, and that's what my boy Connor always does. So I'm happy that he got to come on the podcast and talk about some of his shit. And to be honest with you, I'll never go scuba diving at night. I mean, you have to be a fucking insane person to go diving at night. Like we were saying, you can't see 5 feet ahead of you. I get scared when I go in the ocean during the broad daylight. I can only imagine what it's like under the surface of the water in pitch black. It's terrifying. It's fucking terrifying. So Connor's got balls of steel to submerge underneath that water past 7 o'clock. When that sun sets, I want nothing to do with any type of salt water. I don't even know if I'd be comfortable in a lake after fucking 7 p.m. And lakes, I think the scariest thing in there is like sturgeon. That's a good little fish fact for you guys. I'm surprised I pulled that out of my ass. Sturgeon. They're like the biggest fish in lakes, I think. Or pike. Pike are scary because they have teeth. But we're going down a rabbit hole of lake animals. And when we start going down a rabbit hole of lake animals, it's time to tie off episode 2 of Hot Black Coffee. But guys, we are trending up. We are trending up. If you want to be in the army of the 300, like I was saying in the introduction, we are an army of a very small unit, but a cohesive unit. And when we work together, we take over the world. So make sure you guys are subscribing to the podcast. Make sure you're following me on Instagram, HBCpod. We're going to put all these on YouTube soon, youtube.com/HBCpod. I'm excited, guys. The second episode ever is completed. We did it. We did it, my guys. We did it, my girls. We made it through 2 episodes of Hot Black Coffee. So we are going to come at you once every week. I know on the first episode I said every Wednesday. It's probably going to be a little sporadic, and for that I apologize. We're going to try to get this ironed out and put out every single Wednesday. But for now, it's going to be a little sporadic. So bear with me. Bear with me. But again, thank you guys for tuning in. Another successful episode in the books. Enjoy the rest of your week, guys. Take care.